Shalom, ladies, and welcome to week 22 of Coffee and Connection. Wow, way to show up as Nissan comes in and Pesach is coming and there's a time chain. And thank you. At the same time that I was thinking, I always say the Coffee and Connection is 3 p.m. Eastern. I have to stick to that. I realized making sure all my kids were in bed at 9 p.m. was not going to happen. So this week and next week, until we change the time here, Coffee and Connection is going to have to be at 4 p.m. Eastern because I just can't commit to being there before 10 p.m., to being here. And as my coach always tells me, the only person who has to show up live is you. So make sure it fits for you and everyone else can catch the recording. As much as I love to be here live with all of you lovely ladies who actually are here live, and it's great to be here with you. So I know your time is precious now more than ever. Let's talk about 3 ways to make it to the Seder happy. This was actually the first thing I'm going to share with you was actually the first blog post I ever wrote back in 2017 when I first started out. uh 2016, actually. Yeah, 2016 when I first started out, Absolutely Feminine officially started January 2016. And in this was my first big email that I sent out. The first time I wrote an article, it was really exciting. And it was called Make It to How to Make It to the Seder Happy. And in that article, I'm going to share with you what I said there. And I started with a story that always haunted me. Okay, for most of my life, my childhood, I should say, because that's not most of my life anymore. But for most of my childhood, the majority of my childhood, I spent we had our seders at my grandparents' house. At my father's parents, my bubby who I talked about. Well, I talked about both my bubbies in my first Coffee and Connection, and my bubby loved Pesach. I mean, being there with all of us at the Seder and watching us all sing Chana and asking questions. She loved when we asked questions and shared things that we had learned in school and that we had that we read in our Haggadahs. We loved all the different Haggadahs that they had. We'd be there with our cousins and we'd sing all the songs together all the way until the end. She always stayed up all the way till the end. And at the end of the Seder, we would stand up and we'd actually sing Hatikva and we'd sing a song about Yerushalayim, Al Piskat Harat Sofim. So they had these like very Zionistic benchers that had that at the end. And I remember her. I can still remember to this day. It's going to make me cry if I think about it too much. But I remember her standing there at the end of the Seder, smiling with her, like singing those songs and thinking, wow, like she must be so happy at the end of these 2 Seders with all the work that went into it and all the care that she had to put into making everything and making it there for all of us. And there was a story that she once told me that there was a Seder. There was one Pesach that was Erev Pesach was very crazy. Um, I think my grandfather had lost his mother that year. Something very crazy where Pesach was really busy. Erev Pesach was really busy, and she said the Seder started, and I put my head down to rest for a moment, and I slept through the whole thing. And look, I'm a person who had FOMO before FOMO was a thing, and that story haunted me. How could my grandmother, who loved the Seder, who loved every aspect of being there, how could she sleep through the whole Seder? I couldn't even fathom it. And that story really has stuck with me as I've made Pesach. I mean, through everything, but definitely through making Pesach, which I've made for many, many years. Um, it's really kept me very conscious because I said to her, how could you have slept through the whole thing? She said, I must have been really tired. By the time I got to the Seder, it was so late. I'd been working so hard. I just fell asleep. And that struck me as why it is so important as we're especially Erev Pesach, and I'm going to say throughout the whole week to make sure that as we are making Pesach, as we are preparing for the Seder, to still take care of ourselves. Yes, it is Erev Pesach. Yes, it is Nisan. Yes, it is the week before. Whatever it is, the very first thing, remember to still eat, to still sleep, to still take care of yourself. Because it is very easy to forget ourselves in those weeks. Very easy, right? There's something about like the week before Pesach that like just kind of feels like hunger. Like you don't really eat. Not just because there's no food in the house, right? But because who has time to eat? Like no, but take the time. You have the time. I'm going to invite you to make the time to eat. Make the time for your coffee breaks in the afternoon, in the morning. Make the time. Oh, there you go. Esther's drinking coffee. Make the time to talk to a friend, to say Chag Sameach to your mother, your sister, your best friend, your brother, your aunts, your take the time to get yourself something that will make you feel special at the Seder. Go buy yourself a dress, right? Take that time. Who has time to go shopping? We can, right? Because when you put on that dress after working so hard, it will invigorate you. That feeling when you're like exhausted and you're like, oh my gosh, now it's Yantif and you put on a new dress, it's $1,000,000, right? It feels so good. And actually, when I posted that blog, I put this picture. I don't know if you've seen it. There's this amazing meme that was going around a few years ago of like Cinderella in her ball gown, and it said Purim. And then it had Cinderella in her rags, and it said Pesach, right? It's like, yes, yes, that's how I feel. Purim is I dress up and I feel great. And then Pesach is like, shmata, right? Let's change that narrative. Let's always be queens. Let's always feel good. So take time for yourself, whatever that is for you. Maybe you don't need a new dress, but you get some a new jewelry. By the way, it's a halacha. We're supposed to have something new, and that's a correct use of the word should, right? We're supposed to have something new. Why? Because there's a simcha. There's a happiness that women get from having something new, whether it's a dress, jewelry, perfume, something that makes us feel special. So the halacha actually is that if your husband doesn't buy it for you buy it for yourself. So just good to know, right? Don't blame your husband for that one. You can go get it yourself and take that time, right? There's a reason it's a halacha is because women may not do it on their own. They may say, I don't need it. I don't have time. Let's make the time to make ourselves feel special, to have that simcha. Eat, sleep, right? Take care of yourself. That's tip number one. Tip number two. Sometimes when we go into the Seder, and I'm going to say, especially if you live in Chutz La'aretz, and there's two of them, it might feel boring, right? It's the same story every year. Often our husbands are giving, and our kids, and maybe even us have the same Dvar Torahs to give every year. And there's an excitement that can come with that. But I'm going to also invite you to this year look, perhaps while you're cleaning, look for a shear or a Haggadah that gives you a fresh perspective, something that's going to help you get excited. I know that there's certain, I've always had a passion for the Haggadah. I'm not sure why. It's always excited me. And getting new Haggadahs every few years, learning new shiurim, whether it's a shiur on the Haggadah or even a class on Pesach itself that excites you, can really invigorate your Seder because it gives you something fresh to be thinking about, something fresh to be reading if you actually can sit and be part of the whole thing. And even just like an excitement, oh, when we get to that part, I'm going to give this to our Torah. I'm so excited about it. Um, it helps you to really just feel that feeling coming alive, right? That like excitement to be at the Seder. So find a new book, find a new shir, get a new perspective. I have certain ideas, like certain recommendations, but that doesn't even matter. It can be anything. Something to excite you and give you a new idea, fresh, a fresh perspective, so that it doesn't feel like same old, right? It's something new. And and I'm just going to throw in with that, like, try to get into the Seder, get into the songs, enjoy it. And that leads into number three, because I know for many years and for many of us, the thing that makes it so hard to get into the Seder is that I was always worried about the food. When should I take the food out of the fridge? When should I put it on the plata? When should I put it on the stove? Is it going to burn? Do I have enough? And just like thinking the whole time about this food. And the Seder goes so long. Our Seder, Baruch Hashem, goes overnight, usually goes through the whole night. It's a long night. And the whole time, if you're worrying about the food, it makes it hard to get into it and to enjoy it. The other thing that can make it hard to get into it is if you're dealing with little kids throughout the Seder. And even then, I would invite you to, again, find ways to kind of get into it with them and enjoy your time with them. Even if you're sitting on the couch with your little kids, really, and this is a side thing, to remember that the mitzvah that night is to teach each of our kids on their level. So, yeah, we kind of need to read over the Haggadah, but honestly, we could do that really quickly if we have to, when we got to catch up. But finding a way to make it real for your kids in their way. So if they're hanging out on the couch, talking to them about, have a nice picture book to talk about Yetziat Mitzrayim, to talk about the 10 plagues. Um, Even if you have to take them for a walk or as you're putting them to sleep, you can use those moments and enjoy them, knowing that like I'm fulfilling the mitzvah. I'm doing exactly what I need to do on this night. And especially when you have that sheer or that idea that helps you feel the meaningfulness of it, right? A new perspective, an idea that helps you feel like, I'm doing like something meaningful. It's going to help you to deal, at least from my experience, it helps you deal with even that fact that you're dealing with the kids in the middle of the excitement of the Seder. So, what about the food? I learned this tip from my mom a few years ago. I don't know if she's on right now, but a shout out to her, Baruch Hashem, that she said to me, Chana, just make it simple. Just make a stew. And this big, huge light bulb went on over my head. And this is what I've done. Because here's the thing, let's be honest. After the matzah and the maror and the korach and an egg, if you're Ashkenazi and you eat an egg, how hungry are you? How hungry is anyone? Exactly. As Steph is saying here, no one cares about the food. And don't forget, when you're done eating, you got to eat afikomen. Like, oh my gosh, people are just thinking. You like sit down to that meal and you're like, I got to eat more matzah after this, right? Don't. My father always says it here. Don't fill up. You still. It was my father or my grandfather always say, don't fill up. You still have to eat your afikomen. I think now my husband says it. It's just that you have to always remember that. Don't fill up. You still have afikomen. So what I've learned, and it is so easy because now there's no worrying about the food, is I just make. I will say just, although the truth is I have my daughter's vegetarian, so I can't just do it, but I'll tell you what happens with her. I, Erev Yantif, make a big pot filled with cut up meat and veggies, right? Maybe potatoes, sweet potatoes, zucchini, onions, you throw in some spices, maybe some ketchup or tomato sauce if you guys like it the way. By the way, this also, if you have the custom of not eating roasted, this is such an amazing answer. And it helps us to not be so tired because we didn't have to work so hard before. Before I was making stew, I used to fry my chicken because that's what we did as a kid. I used to stand there frying chicken for everyone, and then nobody ate it, right? So now I make this big stew. And the amazing thing about it is that from the beginning of the night. Like this year, as soon as Shabbos is over, I'll just take it out of the fridge and put it on the plata, right? Or a chicken soup, as you're saying. And I saw someone else write that also. Just a chicken soup is perfect, right? No one's hungry. No one needs carbs. They've had so much matzah. All they need is some warm, yummy protein, maybe some vegetables, right? And everyone's good. And with my daughter who's vegetarian, I think I usually make her like a some type of vegetable kugel. And then she's like, "Oh, Ima, I'm so full." Right? She eats that egg and she's like, "I'm so full. I can't even." So I think I just want to look at the chat. I think there's some good things here going on. Um, People want to know that they're getting their special things. I'm not even sure if you mean it this way, but even if someone's going to say, "Yeah, but it's Pesach. I want to make special Pesach food." Don't worry. You got lots of other meals, right? Especially in Chutz. You got lots of other meals to make all their yummy favorite Pesach recipes. You have plenty of time to use your new cookbooks or your old recipes, your family recipes, lots of time. But this way, you're not making tons of food for the Seder that nobody's going to eat, and you don't have to worry about it the whole time. Is it burning? Is it this? A stew, the longer it sits on the plata, the better it tastes, right? That's the amazing thing about it. So that has totally revolutionized Seder night and even Erev Seder, especially I realized I could ask the butcher to cut up the meat. I don't even have to cut it myself. It's an amazing thing. So what are we basically saying here? What I'm going to invite you to do is to look at the Seder not just as something you have to get to, something that all this work goes into the Seder. And when the Seder comes, we either crash or we're so busy or bored that we don't even enjoy it. And what that's just going to cause is resentment, right? Oh, I got to put in all this work for this Seder, right? And you find this, I hear a lot of women talk about a lot of the holidays in this way. So much resentment, so much work we have to do for these holidays. And what I'm going to invite you to do is to look at the Seder instead as the event to enjoy, the event to anticipate, the event that all this work is for in a exciting way, and to find ways to make it exciting for you so that number one, you're not going into it exhausted. You take care of yourself, you eat, you drink, you sleep, you and physically you've already nourished yourself, right? Even if you have to take a nap after you light candles, why not light candles, take a nap until everybody, okay, so this year we can't necessarily do that because there's like no time, but you can sleep Shabbos afternoon, right? And okay, you're not allowed to say, I'm sleeping for the sake of the Seder, but you can know it in your mind that that's why you're doing it. Make an effort, even if you all your delicious grandchildren over and you want to spend time with them, or even if you feel like, no, I got to review my notes for the Seder, or whatever it is, take that time for yourself to take a nap. Enjoy. We'll have to work extra hard this year, Erev Shabbos, but that means that we have Shabbos afternoon to rest before the Seder. And every year to take time during that day. I don't always get to sleep Erev Pesach, but I always remind myself to take time for myself and to at least get a good night's sleep the night before. That's number one. Number two, spiritually prepare yourself. Really get excited about the Seder. The Seder is the pinnacle of the year, it's the highlight of the year. I, the Seder is the time that we reaffirm for ourselves and our children just why we work so hard to be good religious Jews the rest of the year, right? The Seder is when we remind ourselves what this is all for. So find something. I really invite you to find something to get excited for that experience, right? To really feel like I'm excited for that night and I'm enjoying it and I'm looking forward to it and it's going to be meaningful for me and for everyone at the Seder. And then don't make it so complicated, right? Don't make the food so complicated so that you're not um, jeopardizing the two things we already talked about, right? So you're not working extra hard on Erev Yantif or Erev Shabbos when you don't need to, and you're not allowing the food to take over your whole Pesach, your whole Seder night, right? It's stick it on the platta and forget about it. And then when you get to that part and you get to eat a yummy soup or a yummy stew, it's just awesome. And then you get to go on to Afikoman and enjoy the rest of the Seder, which some of the best parts are still to come, right? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on these three things. Do you think they're going to help you? Um, can you anticipate, this helping your Seder experience? And if anyone has any specific questions or comments on Pesach that they'd like me to answer next week, please be sure to send me an email, coffee and connection question. And if I get a bunch of them, we'll do a Q&A next week on with all of those questions, or I'll see if there's a specific topic so that, there's extra reason to tune in and make time even the week before. And I'm really excited to see you all then as well. So, an exact stew recipe. Great question. I know I'm like that. I'm always like, tell me exactly what I need to put in it. Honestly, I think it's like I put in the meat, I put in a bunch of veggies, whatever I have, zucchini, onion, sweet potato, if I have carrots, anything. And then um, there's different things. I've done different things. I've done just spices like garlic and pepper and paprika. You can put in some wine, like a sweet wine. Oh, that's what I do. I buy this sweet wine. We don't like sweet wine in my house, except for Moscato, which my kids are crazy about. So I buy the sweet wine for the haroset. And then whatever's left, right? I make the haroset. And then whatever's left of that sweet wine, I usually pour most of it into the stew because that just makes it extra yummy. All the alcohol burns out anyways, and it makes it a little thicker. And I don't know, there's something that wine does. Someone expert on food can tell you what it does. You can add ketchup or tomato sauce if you like it tomatoey. Really, any spices that you like. I'm sure you could Google some stew recipes if you need something exact and throw in your meat, your chicken. You could do it as just a soup, but there's something when you add more stuff and the wine and you make it a little thicker, it can make it a little more satisfying for somebody who's going to be like, "What? Just a bowl of chicken soup?" Although remember, they're so full. We're all so full at that point. No one even wants to eat. And I'm like, "Who wants some cookies?" And they're like, "No, Ema, put the cookies away. We'll have them tomorrow." So we really don't need that much food. And it's okay, right? We can give ourselves permission. I remember I once years ago went to a Susie Fishbein cooking demonstration and she said something about like, or it was in one of her cookbooks, I don't remember, but it says something like, do you dare to just serve green beans like plain? And it's like, can you give yourself permission to make things simple? Can we give ourselves permission to make things simple? Things don't have to be crazy. Things don't have to be, patchky and we don't have to again, you can use those family recipes another time. Let's like really family food and it's part of our enjoy serving the food, preparing the food, like putting it out is that idea that we start Hallel before we get to the food and then we end it after the food, the idea that the meal is part of Hallel, that always excites me, right? So I'm like, yeah, I'm setting up for extra Hallel and it's really cool. Oh, and here's a great dessert that Esther is sharing with us that's super easy. Pour melted chocolate over almonds, and that's it. Or any fruit. It's awesome. Yeah, even dessert can be super easy. So thank you everyone for being here. I hope you enjoy these tips. I hope they help you make it to your Seder happy. And I can't wait to see you all next week. We should all have a Chodesh Tov, happy cleaning. And until then, may we all be blessed to live, love, and be loved with all our hearts. Goodbye for now.